Jennifer Bailey was a young woman with a passion for life. She was always seen with a kind smile that could light up any room. Her friends and family often described her as someone who embraced every moment with enthusiasm and grace. Jennifer had a deep love for the great outdoors, whether it was hiking through dense forests, exploring new trails, or simply enjoying the fresh air. Nature was her sanctuary. She found peace and joy in the simplicity of the natural world. She was a dedicated elementary school teacher, known for her warmth and her ability to connect with her students. Her classroom was a place of learning and laughter, where every child felt valued and understood. Jennifer's teaching methods were innovative, often incorporating outdoor activities to make learning more engaging. Jennifer found solace in the tranquility of nature, often seeking refuge in the serene landscape surrounding her home in Pineville. The quiet rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the gentle breeze were her companions during these peaceful moments. Every morning Jennifer would lace up her running shoes and head to Pine Mountain State Resort Park. This routine was more than just exercise for her. It was a time to clear her mind and prepare for the day ahead. She cherished these moments of solitude and reflection. The park, with its towering pines and winding trails, was her sanctuary. The natural beauty of the park provided a perfect backdrop for her morning runs. Each trail held a special memory, and each turn was a familiar friend. Jennifer was a creature of habit, and her morning runs were no exception. She followed the same path every day, a route that had become second nature to her. The rhythmic sound of her footsteps on the trail was like a comforting melody. She would follow the same path, her mind often lost in thought as she navigated the familiar terrain. These runs were a time for her to reflect on her day, plan her lessons, and dream about the future. It was during these moments that she felt most connected to herself. Locals knew her routine, often offering a friendly wave or a knowing nod as she passed. In a small town like Pineville, everyone knew everyone, and Jennifer was a beloved member of the community. Her presence was a familiar and comforting sight to many. On August 16, 1990, Jennifer set out for her usual morning run, unaware that this seemingly ordinary day would be her last. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the forest. It was a beautiful morning, one that held no hint of the tragedy to come. Her disappearance would send shockwaves through the quiet town of Pineville, leaving behind a void that would linger for decades. The community, once filled with the sounds of laughter and joy, was now overshadowed by a sense of loss and unanswered questions. Jennifer's absence was felt deeply by all who knew her, and her memory continued to live on in the hearts of those she touched. The morning of August 16th dawned like any other in Pineville. The small town, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, was just beginning to stir. Birds chirped their morning songs, and the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of pink and orange. It was a picturesque start to what seemed like a typical day. The air was thick with humidity, a common occurrence during the summer months. The mist hung low over the park, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. It was the kind of morning that made you want to take a deep breath and savor the freshness despite the heaviness in the air. The rising sun cast long shadows through the trees, creating a beautiful interplay of light and dark. Sunbeams filtered through the dense canopy, illuminating patches of the forest floor and highlighting the dew-kissed leaves. It was a serene and tranquil scene, one that Jennifer had come to love during her morning jogs. Jennifer, dressed in her usual running attire, set off on her customary route. She had been running this trail for years, finding solace and peace in the rhythmic pounding of her feet against the earth. It was her time to clear her mind, to think, and to enjoy the beauty of nature. She was last seen by a park ranger at approximately 8:30 a.m., her pace steady as she headed deeper into the park's network of trails. The ranger, familiar with her routine, gave her a friendly nod as she passed by. Little did anyone know this would be the last time Jennifer was seen that day. As the morning wore on and Jennifer failed to return home, concern began to creep in. Her family, accustomed to her punctuality, started to worry. They glanced at the clock repeatedly, each passing minute amplifying their anxiety. The usual sounds of the household seemed muted, replaced by an uneasy silence. Her family knew her routine, and her absence from her usual haunts was out of character. The empty running trails and deserted park paths seemed to echo their growing fears. Jennifer was not one to deviate from her schedule without a good reason, and this deviation was alarming. By midday, their worry had escalated into full-blown alarm. The family gathered in the living room, their faces etched with concern. They discussed possible scenarios, each more worrisome than the last. The sense of dread was palpable, and they knew they had to take action. Jennifer's husband David contacted the authorities, reporting her missing and relaying the details of her last known whereabouts. The police took the report seriously, understanding the urgency of the situation. They assured David that they would do everything in their power to find Jennifer. The news of Jennifer's disappearance spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community. Pineville was a place where everyone knew each other, and the thought of one of their own missing was deeply unsettling. Conversations buzzed with concern and speculation as neighbors tried to piece together what might have happened. Friends and neighbors rallied around the Bailey family, offering support and joining the search efforts. The community's response was swift and heartfelt, a testament to the bonds that held them together. People from all walks of life came forward, ready to help in any way they could. Search parties were hastily organized, combing the park's trails and venturing further into the dense woodland. Volunteers equipped with flashlights and maps coordinated their efforts, determined to leave no stone unturned. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now seemed ominous and foreboding. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig ignited a flicker of hope, only to be met with agonizing silence. The searchers called out Jennifer's name, their voices echoing through the trees. Each moment stretched into an eternity as they hoped for a sign, a clue, anything that would lead them to her. The forest held its secrets close, and the day wore on with no answers in sight. The Bailey family was thrust into a nightmare. David, Jennifer's husband, was consumed with worry and guilt, replaying every moment of the last time he had seen his wife, searching for any clue that might lead to her safe return. Jennifer's parents, their faces etched with anguish, clung to the hope that their daughter would be found safe and sound. Days turned into sleepless nights as the search for Jennifer intensified. Volunteers from neighboring towns joined the effort, their determination fueled by a shared sense of desperation. The park, once a place of tranquility, was now swarming with searchers, their footsteps heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Flyers bearing Jennifer's smiling face were posted throughout the town and beyond, a constant reminder of the young woman who had vanished without a trace. Despite the tireless efforts, the search yielded no significant leads. Jennifer's disappearance remained a mystery, her fate shrouded in a fog of unanswered questions. The lack of progress only deepened the family's despair, their hope dwindling with each passing day. The Bell County Sheriff's Department launched a full-scale investigation into Jennifer Bailey's disappearance. The small town of Pineville was immediately thrust into a state of unease, as the community grappled with the sudden and mysterious vanishing of one of their own. The Sheriff's Department, known for handling minor disturbances and local disputes, now faced a daunting task that would test their resources and resolve. Detectives meticulously interviewed family members, friends, and anyone who may have crossed paths with Jennifer on the morning of her disappearance. They combed through every detail of her last known movements, hoping to uncover a clue that would lead them to her. The interviews were exhaustive, often stretching late into the night, as officers sought to piece together a timeline of events. They scoured the park for any sign of foul play, but their efforts were met with a frustrating lack of evidence. The park, usually a place of leisure and family outings, had now become a focal point of the investigation. Officers walked shoulder to shoulder, eyes trained on the ground, searching for anything that might provide a lead. The dense foliage and sprawling landscape made the search painstakingly slow. Forensic teams meticulously examined Jennifer's home, her car, and the area where she was last seen. They dusted for fingerprints, collected fibers, and took samples of anything that seemed out of place. The forensic experts worked methodically, aware that even the smallest piece of evidence could be crucial. They knew that time was of the essence, and every moment lost could mean a lead gone cold, and the area where she was last seen. The search extended into the nearby woods, where officers battled thick underbrush and uneven terrain. They hoped to find something, anything, that would point them in the right direction. The woods, with their eerie silence and hidden corners, seemed to hold their secrets tightly. They searched for any trace of DNA, any indication of a struggle, any clue that might shed light on her whereabouts. The forensic team used advanced technology to analyze samples on site, reducing the time it would take to get results. They were determined to leave no stone unturned, knowing that Jennifer's life could depend on their thoroughness. Any indication of a struggle, any clue that might shed light on her whereabouts. The community watched anxiously as the investigation unfolded, their hopes rising and falling with each passing day. Rumors began to circulate, adding to the tension and uncertainty that gripped Pineville. Any clue that might shed light on her whereabouts. The search was relentless, with officers working around the clock. They sifted through leaves and dirt, examined every inch of ground and followed up on every tip that came in. The community's support was unwavering, with volunteers joining the search efforts and providing meals for the exhausted officers. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation seemed to hit one dead end after another. The initial flurry of activity gave way to a slow, grinding process of elimination. Each lead that didn't pan out was a blow to the morale of the investigators, but they pressed on, driven by the hope of finding Jennifer and bringing her home. The lack of progress fueled speculation and rumor, casting a shadow of suspicion over the once peaceful community. Neighbors who had once greeted each other warmly now eyed each other with suspicion. The close-knit fabric of Pineville began to fray as fear and uncertainty took hold. Theories abounded, ranging from accidental death to foul play. Some believed that Jennifer had fallen victim to a tragic accident, while others were convinced that something more sinister was at play. The investigators considered every possibility, knowing that they couldn't afford to overlook any potential lead. Some whispered that Jennifer had simply run off, seeking a fresh start away from her life in Pineville. They pointed to the pressures she faced and the challenges she had been dealing with. But those who knew her best found it hard to believe that she would leave without a word, without saying goodbye to those she loved. Others clung to the belief that she had met with foul play, perhaps the victim of a random act of violence. The idea that a predator could be lurking in their midst was a terrifying thought for the residents of Pineville. The investigators worked tirelessly to either confirm or dispel this theory, knowing that the safety of the community depended on it. With no concrete evidence to go on, the investigation seemed to be at a standstill. The frustration was palpable, but the determination of the investigators never wavered. They knew that giving up was not an option, and they continued to search for the breakthrough that would bring Jennifer home.